I'm Delia, 53 years old, and I'm sitting in my corner office overlooking Manhattan's bustling streets. The morning light catches the crystal paperweight on my mahogany desk, casting tiny rainbows across financial documents that would have seemed impossible just 3 years ago. But what brings me back to this moment isn't the success surrounding me now. It's the memory of a birthday dinner that changed everything. 3 years ago, on my 40th birthday, my husband called my handmade jewelry business a cute little hobby in front of his entire family. They all laughed. What they didn't know was that their mockery would fuel the fire that built a multi-million-dollar empire. Before I tell you how their laughter turned to silence, let me know where you're watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe for more stories of turning pain into power. Now, let me take you back to that devastating birthday dinner that became the catalyst for everything. Let me paint you the picture of who I was before that fateful evening. For 15 years, I taught third grade at Willowbrook Elementary in Connecticut. My classroom walls were covered with student artwork, and my desk drawer held emergency tissues for scraped knees and broken hearts. I loved those children, but something inside me always yearned for more creative expression. I met Marcus during a weekend trip to Martha's Vineyard. He was tall, confident, and worked in investment banking for a prestigious Manhattan firm. His family owned a summer estate there, complete with tennis courts and a private dock. When he asked me to dinner, I felt like Cinderella meeting her prince. Marcus's family was old money Connecticut elite. His mother, Eleanor, carried herself like royalty, always dressed in designer suits and pearls that cost more than my monthly salary. His father, Richard, had recently retired as CEO of a major pharmaceutical company. Brother Brandon was a corporate lawyer who specialized in mergers and acquisitions, while sister Stephanie had just completed her residency in cardiology at Yale. From our first family gathering, I sensed their subtle disapproval. They smiled politely when Marcus introduced me as a teacher, but I caught the exchanged glances. During dinner conversations, they discussed stock portfolios and charity galas while I quietly ate my perfectly prepared salmon. When they asked about my family, I mentioned my father's auto repair shop and my mother's work as a nurse. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees, but Marcus seemed different from his family. He told me he admired teachers and respected my dedication to education. When he proposed after 2 years of dating, I believed our love could bridge any social gap. We married in their family chapel, surrounded by roses that cost more than most people's cars. My jewelry making started as a college hobby. I'd always been drawn to beautiful stones and delicate metalwork. YouTube became my university, teaching me techniques passed down through generations of artisans. I spent weekends at gem shows learning to identify quality stones and understanding their properties. My fingers developed calluses from hours of wire wrapping and soldering, but each finished piece felt like a small miracle. During our engagement, I made jewelry for friends and family. My creations became conversation pieces at dinner parties. People would ask where I'd purchased my earrings or necklaces, amazed to learn I'd crafted them myself. The compliments fed something deep within my soul that, teaching wonderful as it was, never quite satisfied. After 2 years of marriage, I reached a crossroads. The classroom felt smaller each day, and my creativity demanded more space to grow. I'd saved $12,000 from my teaching salary, and my jewelry skills had evolved beyond simple hobby level. When I told Marcus I wanted to leave teaching to pursue jewelry design full-time, he surprised me with his enthusiastic support. At least that's what I thought it was. I converted a corner of our basement into a workspace. The concrete floors were cold, but natural light streamed through said high windows. I invested $3,000 in professional tools, quality materials, and proper lighting. My workbench became my sanctuary, scattered with gemstones that caught the light like captured stars. My first month as an entrepreneur taught me humility quickly. I launched my Etsy shop called Delia's Treasures and created an Instagram account to showcase my work. My debut collection featured handmade silver earrings, adorned with semi-precious stones I'd carefully selected for their unique properties and beauty. The first week I sold nothing. The second week brought my first sale, a pair of amethyst drop earrings for $25. I celebrated like I'd won the lottery, calling Marcus at work to share the news. His response was lukewarm, congratulations, followed by a reminder about our mortgage payment. By month's end, I'd sold 5 pieces for a total of $127. After material costs and Etsy fees, my profit was $63. Marcus reviewed my numbers with the scrutiny of an accountant auditing a Fortune 500 company. His excitement had clearly diminished. The second month brought new challenges. I spent hours photographing products, writing descriptions, and researching social media marketing strategies. My days stretched from dawn to midnight, but sales remained sluggish. Marcus began making comments about weekend hobbies versus sustainable careers. The shift in his attitude was subtle but unmistakable. Where once he'd asked about my progress with genuine interest, now his questions carried undertones of skepticism. When friends asked about my business at dinner parties, Marcus would quickly redirect conversations toward his work achievements or current market trends. His family's comments became more pointed during our monthly dinners. Eleanor would ask when I'd return to teaching, suggesting that educated women had responsibilities beyond crafts. Richard wondered aloud about the financial wisdom of leaving a stable career for uncertain ventures. Brandon and Stephanie offered polite smiles, but clearly viewed my pursuit as a temporary phase. The isolation was crushing. The basement workspace that had once felt like a creative sanctuary now seemed like a lonely cave. I'd spend hours alone designing and creating while Marcus worked late or attended networking events. When he came home exhausted from his corporate battles, my excitement about a new design or potential customer seemed trivial in comparison. But something inside me refused to surrender. Every negative comment became fuel for determination. Every dismissive glance motivated me to work harder. I studied successful jewelry businesses online, learning about branding, customer service, and quality control. I watched videos about photography and social media marketing until my eyes burned. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A fashion blogger named Sophia discovered my Instagram and commissioned a custom necklace for her sister's wedding. The piece featured hand-wrapped rose quartz stones in an intricate silver setting that took me 3 days to complete. When Sophia posted photos wearing the necklace, her 40,000 followers took notice. Orders began trickling in. By month 3, I'd earned $850. Month 4 brought $1,200 in sales. I was finally covering my material costs and earning enough to reinvest in inventory. The numbers weren't life-changing, but they represented progress that couldn't be ignored. Marcus remained skeptical despite the improvement. He questioned the sustainability of handmade jewelry sales and suggested I consider this experience a learning opportunity before returning to education. His lack of faith stung deeply, especially when I needed his support most. I began keeping my successes to myself, sharing victories only with the stones and silver wire that understood my dreams. 6 months before my birthday, everything accelerated. A boutique hotel chain discovered my work through Sophia's blog and commissioned 200 pieces for their gift shops across New England. The order was worth $8,000, representing more money than I'd ever imagined earning from jewelry. I burst into Marcus's home office, contract in hand, expecting him to share my excitement. Instead, he cautioned me against counting chickens before they hatched. His reaction deflated my joy like a punctured balloon. Where I saw validation and opportunity, he saw a single lucky break that might never repeat itself. My monthly revenue climbed to $3,500, then $5,000. I was working 14-hour days, but the exhaustion felt purposeful rather than draining. Each ring, necklace, and bracelet represented more than jewelry. They were small victories against doubt and skepticism. Family dinners became increasingly uncomfortable. Eleanor's questions about my return to teaching grew more persistent and pointed. She'd make comments about educated women wasting their talents on frivolous pursuits, while her children discussed their professional achievements. Richard would nod approvingly at Brandon's latest corporate victory while barely acknowledging my business updates. The tension reached new heights when I announced plans to hire a photographer for professional product shots and invest in website redesign. Marcus opposed the expenditure, arguing I was throwing good money after bad. His words echoed his mother's disapproval, and I realized how deeply their influence had shaped his perspective. Our relationship strained under the weight of unspoken resentments. Marcus wanted the old Delia back, the elementary school teacher who came home with finger-painted cards and simple problems. I was becoming someone else entirely, someone driven by ambition he couldn't understand or support. 3 months before my birthday, business exploded beyond my wildest expectations. I'd secured a contract with a corporate client worth $15,000. They wanted custom pieces for their executive gift program, trusting my designs to represent their brand to important clients. The validation was intoxicating after months of family skepticism. I should have been celebrating, but Marcus's reaction dampened my enthusiasm once again. He questioned whether I could fulfill such a large order while maintaining quality standards. His doubt felt like betrayal after everything I'd achieved despite his lack of support. The stress was affecting my health and our marriage. I'd lost weight from working long hours and eating irregularly. Dark circles shadowed my eyes from staying up late to meet deadlines. Marcus complained about my absence from social events and my distraction during conversations. We were living in the same house, but growing further apart each day. 1 month before my birthday, I decided to surprise Marcus with the news of my success. I'd not only fulfilled the corporate contract, but had received inquiries for 3 more similar projects. My monthly revenue had reached $8,000, and I was seriously considering hiring an assistant to help manage the workload. Instead of celebration, Marcus delivered an ultimatum: make the business genuinely profitable by year's end, or return to teaching where I belonged. His words cut deep because they revealed how little faith he had in my abilities. In his mind, I was still playing with beads in the basement rather than building a legitimate enterprise. As my birthday approached, I felt increasingly isolated despite my professional success. The family dinner Marcus planned was supposed to celebrate another year of my life, but I suspected it would become another opportunity for his family to question my choices. I had no idea how prophetic that fear would prove to be. The evening of my 40th birthday arrived, with all the warmth of a corporate board meeting. Marcus had reserved the private dining room at Chez Laurent, an upscale French restaurant downtown where his family gathered for special occasions. The room featured crystal chandeliers, burgundy wallpaper, and oil paintings of pastoral scenes that probably cost more than most people's annual salaries. I dressed carefully that evening, choosing a black cocktail dress and wearing several pieces from my latest collection. The silver and moonstone necklace caught the light beautifully, and my matching earrings swayed gently as I moved. If anyone bothered to look closely, they'd see the craftsmanship that had consumed my life for the past year. The table was set for 8, with fine china and multiple wine glasses. Marcus's family arrived fashionably late, as was their custom. Eleanor swept in wearing a navy blue suit that screamed designer label, her usual pearls gleaming at her throat. Richard followed in his custom-tailored suit, checking his Rolex as though calculating the cost of his time. Brandon and Stephanie completed the family tableau, both impeccably dressed and radiating the confidence that came from careers everyone respected. Conversation flowed around topics I'd grown accustomed to hearing. Richard discussed his latest golf tournament scores, while Eleanor planned a charity luncheon for the country club. Brandon shared details about a high-profile merger his firm was handling, and Stephanie described a complex surgery she'd performed the previous week. Their achievements filled the room like expensive perfume, overwhelming and inescapable. I waited for an appropriate moment to share my own news. Business had reached heights I'd never imagined possible, and I thought my family might finally understand the legitimacy of my pursuit. The corporate contracts were generating serious revenue, and inquiries from potential clients arrived daily. Surely these numbers would command their respect. When the conversation paused between the appetizer and main course, I seized my opportunity. Actually, I have some exciting news about my business. I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. The table's attention turned toward me with expressions ranging from polite interest to barely concealed impatience. Marcus immediately interrupted before I could continue. "Let's not bore everyone with shop talk," he said with a laugh that sounded forced. His intervention stung because it revealed his embarrassment about my work, rather than pride in my accomplishments. Eleanor smoothly redirected the conversation, her voice dripping with false concern. "Speaking of work, when are you returning to teaching, dear? The children must miss you terribly." Her question wasn't really about children missing me. It was about when I'd abandon my foolish dreams and return to what they considered appropriate work for someone of my background. I explained about my business growth, the recent contracts, and the steady increase in revenue. My voice grew stronger as I detailed specific achievements, hoping facts and figures might penetrate their predetermined opinions. This wasn't a hobby anymore. It was generating real income and attracting serious clients. The room's reaction was everything I'd feared and nothing I'd hoped for. Polite smiles appeared on every face, but their eyes revealed the truth. They were humoring me, waiting for this uncomfortable topic to pass so conversation could return to subjects they deemed worthy of discussion. Brandon broke the silence with a condescending chuckle. "That's cute, like selling at a farmer's market." His comparison reduced months of hard work and genuine achievement to the level of homemade preserves sold from folding tables. The casual cruelty of his dismissal took my breath away. Stephanie added her own verbal knife thrust with surgical precision. "I admire people who have hobbies. It's so important to have creative outlets." Her tone suggested she was speaking to a child who'd shown her a finger painting rather than to an adult discussing legitimate business accomplishments. The word hobby hung in the air like poison gas. I'd moved beyond hobby territory months ago, but they couldn't or wouldn't acknowledge that transition. In their world, anything that didn't require advanced degrees or corporate structures couldn't be considered real work. I tried once more to clarify my position. "It's not a hobby," I said, my voice carrying an edge of frustration. "It's my career now." The silence that followed was deafening, filled with exchanged glances and barely suppressed amusement. Then Marcus delivered the blow that would change everything between us forever. "Delia, you're being naive," he said, his tone mixing condescension with what he probably thought was gentle correction. "Your little jewelry thing is sweet, but let's be realistic about calling it a business." The word naive echoed in my mind as the table erupted in laughter. These people who claimed to love me found my dreams amusing rather than admirable. Eleanor's laugh was particularly musical, like silver bells announcing my humiliation. "Oh, Marcus, you're so patient with her creativity phase," she said, as though my entrepreneurial efforts were temporary mental illness requiring his tolerance. Richard added his own commentary with the authority of a former CEO. "Every woman needs her little projects," he declared, reducing my achievements to the level of scrapbooking or flower arranging. The casual sexism in his statement would have been offensive under normal circumstances. In this context, it was devastating. I sat frozen in my chair, feeling the heat of embarrassment creep up my neck, while their laughter continued around me. These were supposed to be the people who supported me, yet they just publicly mocked everything I'd worked to achieve. The jewelry I wore suddenly felt heavy against my skin. Beautiful pieces that represented countless hours of labor they dismissed as playing with beads. "Excuse me," I managed to say, standing on unsteady legs and walking toward the restaurant's ladies' room. I needed space to process what had just happened, to understand how people who claimed to care about me could be so deliberately cruel. The bathroom mirror reflected a woman I barely recognized. My face was flushed with humiliation, but my eyes held something new, something that hadn't been there an hour before. Anger was replacing hurt, and determination was crystallizing from disappointment. I touched the moonstone at my throat and made a silent promise to these beautiful creations that adorned me. When I returned to the table, I wore a smile that fooled everyone except myself. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of forced conversation and mechanical chewing. I responded to questions with appropriate words, while my mind raced with plans and possibilities. They thought they'd put me in my place, but they'd actually shown me exactly where I didn't belong. The car ride home was silent, except for the hum of expensive German engineering. Marcus seemed oblivious to the damage his words had caused, probably believing he'd done me a favor by publicly managing my expectations. He had no idea he'd just witnessed the death of his compliant wife and the birth of a woman who would never again seek his approval for her dreams. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Marcus slept peacefully beside me. His gentle snoring filled the room, but my mind was anything but quiet. Every word from dinner replayed with crystal clarity, each laugh echoing like a challenge I was finally ready to accept. The woman who'd walked into that restaurant seeking family validation was gone forever. By dawn, my hurt had crystallized into something far more powerful. I wouldn't waste energy trying to make them understand or appreciate my work. Instead, I channel every ounce of pain into proving them wrong through actions rather than words. Their laughter would become the soundtrack to my success. Marcus approached the next morning with his usual routine, checking stock prices on his phone while drinking coffee and scanning financial news. His behavior suggested he viewed the previous evening as unremarkable, just another family dinner where proper perspectives had been maintained. He had no idea he'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. When he made his usual comment about my beads and trinkets, I simply nodded and smiled. No point in arguing with someone who'd already revealed his true feelings so clearly. Instead, I focused that energy on strategic planning that would transform my business from successful to spectacular. The week following my birthday, I worked with an intensity that surprised even me. Every design decision carried new weight. Every customer interaction became an opportunity to build something lasting. I researched wholesale opportunities, investigated trade show possibilities, and reached out to celebrity stylists who might appreciate unique pieces. My first major decision was hiring a social media manager named Alex, who specialized in luxury lifestyle brands. She brought fresh eyes to my Instagram presence, suggesting improvements to photography posting schedules and hashtag strategies that would reach affluent customers seeking exclusive jewelry. The second decision involved completely redesigning my website with professional photography and sophisticated branding that reflected the quality of my work. No more basement lighting and amateur descriptions. This would be a digital showroom worthy of the pieces I created. Marcus continued his dismissive attitude throughout this transformation, apparently viewing my increased activity as desperation rather than determination. Still playing with your beads, he'd ask when he found me working late in my transformed studio space. His questions no longer hurt, because his opinion had become irrelevant to my success. I stopped sharing business updates with him entirely. Why invite skepticism when I could focus on results? This silence created distance between us, but I welcomed it. His lack of support had become a liability rather than disappointment. 2 months after my birthday, everything changed. A fashion magazine editor discovered my Instagram and featured 3 of my pieces in their upcoming issue about emerging designers. The morning that magazine hit newsstands, my website received more traffic than it had in the previous 6 months combined. Orders poured in faster than I could process them. My phone rang constantly with inquiries from customers who'd seen the magazine spread and wanted similar pieces. Within a week, I'd sold $8,000 worth of jewelry and accumulated a waiting list of 300 potential customers. The magazine feature caught the attention of a prominent actress who ordered a custom necklace for a red carpet appearance. When photographers captured her wearing my design at a major premiere, the resulting publicity was worth more than any paid advertising campaign could have provided. Marcus finally began paying attention to my activities, but his newfound interest felt opportunistic rather than supportive. "Maybe I underestimated your little business," he said one evening, as though his previous dismissal had been minor miscalculation rather than fundamental disrespect. My response was professionally polite, but emotionally cold. "It's not little anymore," I replied, without elaborating on the explosive growth he'd failed to notice or support. Trust had been broken, and success couldn't automatically repair that damage. By the fourth month after my birthday, my monthly revenue had reached $25,000. I'd hired 3 assistants, rented proper studio space, and implemented inventory management systems that could handle the increasing demand. The transformation was remarkable, but Marcus had forfeited his right to celebrate it with me. The distance between us grew wider each week. We lived in the same house, but existed in different worlds. His corporate environment valued conformity and traditional success markers, while my entrepreneurial journey celebrated creativity and risk-taking. We'd become strangers, sharing a mortgage and little else. I found myself working longer hours, partly from necessity, but partly to avoid uncomfortable conversations about our deteriorating relationship. The studio became my refuge, filled with beautiful stones and precious metals that never questioned my dreams or mocked my ambitions. Here, surrounded by my creations, I felt truly alive for the first time in years. 8 months after that devastating birthday dinner, my business had transformed beyond anything I dared imagine. Monthly revenue had reached $40,000, with orders coming from clients across 3 continents. The magazine feature had opened doors to fashion shows, celebrity stylists, and luxury retailers who wanted exclusive partnerships. Vogue contacted me about a feature story on emerging American designers, calling my work sophisticated and innovative. The validation from such a prestigious publication felt like redemption after months of family skepticism. Here were fashion experts recognizing what my own husband couldn't see. International expansion happened organically as wealthy travelers discovered my pieces in upscale boutiques and requested shipping to their home countries. I'd established relationships with suppliers in 5 countries and was learning about import regulations and currency exchange rates. The elementary school teacher was becoming a global entrepreneur. My team had grown to 8 employees, working from a converted warehouse space that looked nothing like the basement corner where this journey began. Professional photography studios, packaging stations, and design workbenches filled the airy space that hummed with creative energy and commercial purpose. Marcus's attitude had shifted from dismissive to opportunistic as my success became impossible to ignore. He began suggesting business strategies and offering financial advice, apparently forgetting his previous characterization of my work as naive hobby crafting. His sudden interest felt insulting rather than supportive. "Maybe I underestimated your little business," he'd said repeatedly, as though admission of error would restore his authority over my decisions. But the damage couldn't be undone through casual acknowledgement. He'd revealed his true feelings when he thought I'd never succeed, and success didn't erase that betrayal. The transformation in our marriage became apparent to everyone around us. Friends noticed my newfound confidence and independence, while Marcus seemed increasingly uncomfortable with my achievements. He'd built his identity around being the successful spouse, and my rapid ascent disrupted that narrative. "It's not little anymore" became my standard response to his attempts at involvement. The words carried weight beyond their literal meaning, establishing boundaries he'd forfeited the right to cross. I no longer needed his approval or feared his disapproval. Then came the phone call that would change everything permanently. A lawyer representing a luxury conglomerate requested a meeting to discuss potential acquisition of my brand. The initial conversation was surreal, with the numbers being mentioned that seemed to belong to someone else's life story. The acquisition process began quietly while I maintained normal business operations. Due diligence required 6 weeks of financial review, legal documentation, and valuation assessments. Professional advisors examined every aspect of my business with microscopes, but their conclusion was unanimous. I'd built something extraordinary. I kept the acquisition discussions completely secret, wanting to see how high their final offer would climb without outside pressure or advice. This was my creation, my decision, and my moment to prove the ultimate value of what they'd called a cute little hobby. Marcus's attempts to insert himself into business decisions became more frequent and obvious. He offered opinions about expansion strategies and suggested investment opportunities, apparently believing his financial background qualified him to guide my entrepreneurial future. His presumption was breathtaking after years of dismissal. "I've managed fine without your input" became another standard response that established clear boundaries around my autonomous success. The woman who'd once sought his approval for every major decision was making million-dollar choices independently. The final offer arrived on a Wednesday morning, $3.2 million for my brand design's customer database and international distribution networks. They wanted to retain me as creative director for 2 years, ensuring continuity while expanding global reach. The number was staggering, representing more money than Marcus earned in 4 years of corporate climbing. I had 1 week to consider their offer and make the most important financial decision of my life. The choice involved more than money. It represented validation of every risk I'd taken and every doubt I'd overcome. This was proof that dreams could become reality when pursued with unwavering determination. The internal conflict was intense but brief. Selling meant giving up direct control of my creative baby, but it also meant establishing financial independence that would reshape my entire future. The decision became clear when I realized this wasn't about keeping the business. It was about proving its worth to everyone who doubted it. I accepted their offer with the condition that I'd remain as creative director for 2 years, ensuring my vision would guide the brand's continued evolution. The contract signing was scheduled for the following Friday, exactly 9 months after my birthday humiliation. The timing felt like poetic justice. The morning I decided to reveal everything, I felt calmer than I'd been in months. Today would bring closure to a chapter that had been 9 months in the writing, with a conclusion no one saw coming, except me. I called Marcus's mother and arranged another family dinner at Chez Laurent, booking the same private dining room where my dreams had been mocked. I selected my outfit with the same care I'd used for that birthday dinner, but this time, confidence replaced hope. The black dress was tailored perfectly to my slimmer frame. The jewelry I wore represented my finest work, a platinum and diamond necklace that had taken weeks to complete with matching earrings that caught light like captured stars. Eleanor's voice had carried surprise when I called about dinner arrangements. Family gatherings were usually Marcus's responsibility, and my initiative seemed unusual enough to merit comment. "Of course, dear," she'd said, probably wondering what prompted my sudden interest in social coordination. I ordered champagne for the table, specifically requesting their finest vintage. The sommelier's raised eyebrow at my selection suggested I was spending more on wine than most people earned in a week, but money had lost its intimidating power over me. Today was about celebration, not budget consciousness. The family arrived with their usual punctuality and perfectly coordinated attire. Eleanor wore ivory silk with her grandmother's pearls, while Richard sported a navy suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Brandon and Stephanie completed the picture of professional success and inherited privilege. Marcus seemed puzzled by my confident demeanor and the expensive champagne chilling in silver buckets beside our table. His confusion was understandable, since the last time I'd organized a family gathering was never. Tonight represented my debut as someone who could afford such gestures without financial stress. Conversation followed its predictable patterns initially. Richard discussed his latest golf handicap improvements, while Eleanor planned another charity benefit for the Arts Council. Brandon shared updates about his firm's expansion into international markets, and Stephanie described her research into innovative cardiac procedures. Their achievements filled the room with familiar comfort. I waited until the main course was served before announcing my news. The timing needed to be perfect with everyone relaxed and attentive. "I have something exciting to share about my jewelry business." I began watching their faces carefully for the subtle expressions of tolerance they'd worn 9 months earlier. The announcement came with deliberate simplicity. "I sold it yesterday for $3.2 million. The words hung in the air like expensive perfume, beautiful and overwhelming. I watched their faces transform from polite interest to shocked disbelief as the number registered in their minds. Silence fell over our private dining room like a heavy curtain. Eleanor's fork stopped midway to her mouth, and a drop of wine escaped from Richard's glass onto the pristine tablecloth. Brandon's legal training failed him completely, leaving him speechless for perhaps the first time in his professional life. Stephanie's surgical precision abandoned her as she stared with her mouth slightly open. Marcus recovered first, attempting to rewrite history in real time. "I always believed in you," he said, his voice carrying conviction that would have been impressive if it weren't completely false. The speed of his revisionism was remarkable, but I prepared for this moment too carefully to let it pass unchallenged. "Actually, Marcus," I replied calmly, "you called it naive." You all laughed. My words cut through his attempted reconstruction of the past like a scalpel through tissue. There would be no comfortable revision of what had actually happened in this same room 9 months ago. I addressed each family member individually, reminding them of their specific comments and reactions. Eleanor's protective statement was dissected. Brandon's farmer's market comparison was recalled, and Stephanie's hobby characterization was repeated verbatim. Their own words became evidence of the disrespect they'd shown when they thought my dreams were worthless. Eleanor attempted damage control with her social grace training. "We were just being protective," she said, as though their mockery had been motivated by concern rather than condescension. The explanation was pathetic in its transparency, but I'd expected nothing better from someone who'd spent decades perfecting the art of maintaining appearances. Protective of what I asked? My dreams, my ambition. The questions hung in the air because there were no good answers. They'd been protecting their own sense of superiority rather than anything valuable about me. Marcus's desperation became increasingly obvious as he realized the implications of my announcement. "Honey, we can invest this money wisely," he said, apparently believing that financial partnership could repair the emotional damage he'd caused. His assumption that my success belonged to both of us was breathtakingly arrogant. "There is no we in this success," I replied, establishing the boundary that would define our future relationship. This achievement was mine alone, built despite his skepticism rather than because of his support. He'd forfeited any claim to shared credit through months of dismissive commentary. The car ride home was silent, except for Marcus's repeated attempts to explain his previous behavior and apologize for words that couldn't be taken back. His explanation sounded increasingly desperate as he realized how completely he'd misjudged both my capabilities and the consequences of his disrespect. The following week, I moved into a penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, purchased with cash from my business sale. The space was filled with natural light and featured walls perfect for displaying the jewelry pieces I'd kept for my personal collection. For the first time in years, I was surrounded only by beauty and possibility. Separation papers were filed quietly through a lawyer who specialized in high net worth divorces. The proceedings would be amicable because I wanted nothing from Marcus except freedom from his judgment and limitations. My success had purchased independence in every sense of the word. The healing journey that followed involved therapy sessions that helped me understand how I lost myself in seeking approval from people whose opinions didn't matter. I formed new friendships with other entrepreneurs who understood the challenges of building something from nothing. These relationships were based on mutual respect rather than social obligations. My new business venture launched 6 months later, focusing on custom pieces for collectors who appreciated unique artistry. The creative freedom was intoxicating after years of proving myself to skeptics who'd never understood the value of what I was creating. Looking back now, I realized the most important lesson wasn't about business success or financial independence. It was about recognizing that the people closest to us are sometimes the ones who can't see our potential because it threatens their perception of who we're supposed to be. The best revenge isn't proving others wrong through spectacular success. It's proving yourself right by pursuing dreams that matter to you, regardless of who believes in them. Sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is their doubt because it forces you to find strength you never knew you possessed. I've become a mentor to women entrepreneurs who face similar skepticism from families who claim to love them but can't support their ambitions. Success isn't about the money, though financial independence certainly helps. It's about the confidence that comes from building something meaningful with your own hands in mind. My advice to anyone facing similar doubts from people they love is simple. Let their skepticism fuel your determination rather than diminish your dreams. The laughter that once humiliated me became the rhythm that drove my success. Sometimes, the best thing skeptics can do is get out of your way. What's your biggest dream that others have called unrealistic? Have you ever had family members dismiss your goals as hobbies? Share your story in the comments below, because your dreams matter regardless of who believes in them. Hit that like button if this story inspired you to pursue something meaningful. Subscribe for more stories of turning setbacks into comebacks, and share this with anyone who needs reminder that success is the sweetest response to skepticism. Thank you for listening to my journey, and may your dreams be bigger than other people's doubts about them.